or other stores, you're going to be competing, and the shelves are going to be empty, and you're going to be stressed out. So that's what we want to talk about this now, to get that kit. And it's expensive if you don't start last year and look at your shelf life and add to it. So a little bit at a time. And that's why I talk about take the checklist, develop that, put it on your refrigerator, and each paycheck just get a little bit so you have enough there. And don't forget about the children. Again, cell phones, assume they're not going to work. So get some coloring books, get some puzzles, get some cards, get Scrabble, something that you can again work together with. Get a book. So that we can go to old school of just talk to each other. If you have a barbecue grill, get to be able to barbecue a little bit. Those are important things to have. We talk about, small little battery backups. We call them like UPSs you can get. They'll last, for a couple of minutes. That may help you out for small refrigerators and such. Mm-hmm. One of the things I learned about a couple of years ago is, get some extra, empty milk cartons and put water in them and put them in your freezer. And so when your power does go out, you can take that frozen water and put it into your refrigerator and keep things cooler longer. Mm-hmm. That becomes a challenge, is keeping your perishables going, but a lot of non-perishables. And I'll be able to provide, some shelf-stable meals, and some of them are low sodium and box water. 3 liters of water per person per day. When I start opening my points of distribution in 2 meals per person per day, and come through either drive through, or we'll have walk-up services, and we'll put out. Those are going to be 5 days after the event, but that's why you emphasize being self-sufficient. And then don't forget a can opener, for tuna fish cans and things that don't have that. It's important. The last thing I would say, and this is one that I didn't understand initially when I saw the list, it said a whistle.
Yes, so people can.
You want a whistle?
So that people can find you. Yeah, and if for emergency.
You can go longer. You can last longer. You'll save your breath.
And we can, and we need to. On that note, we're wrapping up. Get yourself a whistle. Thank you, Director Joshin. And I'm going to be prepared this storm season. All right, we'll be back right after this short break.
Expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters. The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
morning, good morning, good morning. And if you're just tuning in, you are at 93.1 FM WTJX, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. And I am not Neville. This is Jamila, just Jamila. And I am filling in for Neville this morning. And I have the opportunity, I think, to conduct the first radio interview of the new Chief Executive Officer, Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority, Mr. Karl Knight. Welcome.
Thank you.
And
yes,
Mr.
it is the
Knight,
first radio interview.
It is good. I don't know if it's good. I mean, it's good that it's me. I don't know if it's good. It's here. You know, we're having fun though.
The hostess with the mostest.
I love filling in for Neville, and this is a wonderful opportunity to get to interview you. It just seemed like on Friday you were still the chief of staff for Government House. I had a conversation with you on matters that were legislatively and executive branch related. And then on Monday, you're wearing a new hat. You didn't give yourself time to breathe. How is the transition going?
The transition is going well. So, I mean, I was the chief of staff for the governor of the Virgin Islands up until Sunday night, and still doing chief of staff stuff up to Sunday afternoon. Mm-hmm. And then the next morning, totally had to flip that switch and turn on a new gear. But the transition is going well because I prepared for that. And, we had been at Government House involved very closely, working hand in glove with WAPA over the last few months as we had the state of emergency. So we've been having at one point daily conversations with WAPA. I'd been monitoring those very closely. At one point I was leading and I stepped back. I was monitoring. And certainly we had a good, robust exchange of information over the past few months. So when it came time to flip that switch, I was able to kind of pick up, I hit the ground running because I knew exactly what the situation was and we could move on from there. So it is a little bit of a change. I had to meet my new team and meet the new employees. That is a little bit of a change. I almost forgot to say goodbye to my old employees. So I had to... up to yesterday, I said goodbye to the cabinet and some of the folks I've worked really closely with over the years. And now I'm 100% all in.
Okay. So let me just dive right in. WTJX reported, and when the announcement was made that you had been selected for the Chief Executive Officer, they posted the story on their Facebook page, and their page was inundated with comments as to be expected. However, there was a reoccurring theme or a reoccurring criticism. And let me just ask you about it point blank. One of the concerns raised was you served and you worked at WAPA before. You worked at WAPA before and you were on the board and you voted for VTOL, and that made your appointment null and your ability to lead that agency because of your vote on VTOL null and void. Can you tell me whether or not any of those assertions were true, and how do you respond to that sort of criticism?
Yeah, I mean, so those assertions are misguided. People can have whatever opinions they want to have. I could tackle it from two different perspectives. One, everybody needs to know that at the time I served on the board, I was one of 9 board members. And I was not the chair of the board, so I wasn't even the lead amongst the 9. I was 1 vote out of 9. I was there when we made the decision to engage with VTOL. I was not there. I wasn't around long enough to see the project actually get off the ground. And I wasn't there for a lot of the more contentious costs issues that came up after the fact. For most of those, I had already vacated the board at that time as well. So I wasn't there for a lot of the change order discussions and negotiations, and I really can't speak to what happened as far as the costing of the project. I do know the project is misunderstood because it was always understood that there was further work that needed to be done. It was always understood that the initial cost was not the final cost, and that was something that we as board members knew up front. I also want to say, for people that look at VTOL as the big bad boogeyman, that project is critical to WAPA to this day. Whatever the cost overruns are, the project has already paid for those probably in the first 2 years. All of the savings and fuel expenses probably paid for any cost overruns that the project incurred. We are relying on propane right now. The reason why VTOL became necessary is because we were burning pretty expensive fuel that at the time had went up to like $150 a barrel. And you got a big reduction in fuel expenses. That LEAC came down as a result of the propane project. Right now, we are fighting tooth and nail to get all of our units running on propane because it costs us so much cheaper. It's about $250,000 a day if I'm running on propane. If I'm running on diesel, it's about $900,000 a day that we expend in fuel expenses. So it's in our best interest to get everything on propane, and we can only do that because of the VTOL project. And VTOL, for better or for worse, they built everything. They absorbed all the cost overruns. They put all the upfront costs and didn't charge WAPA a dime until the project was fully operational and fully commissioned. At that point, they said, okay, now the bill is due. And that's when the problem started with WAPA being able to pay and afford what they had asked VTOL to build for them. So I think the project has been misunderstood, but propane and our conversion to propane was an essential move that we had to make at the time, and it's actually what is going to help when we get those Wardzillas in St. Thomas online. That's also what's going to help reduce our costs.
Okay, so let me, if I understand you correctly, then you're saying you were there when the initial vote to engage occurred, but you weren't present for the votes on the change orders and the cost overruns, etc.
Yeah, most of the change orders, there was a couple that came through. Some obvious ones. We ran into some issues drilling down into the rocks in St. Thomas. We had to make some modifications to the dock. Most of what came afterwards, I wasn't around for.
Okay. So let me follow up. Your initial stint at the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority, though.
Yes.
People need to understand this. They had what was called the Alva McFarlane Scholarship.
That's correct.
You were a recipient of that, correct?
Yes, yeah,
and
that's correct.
You had to return and work within the plant.
That's correct.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people, they see where you are, but they don't know how you got to where you are. You didn't just start out in a leadership position. You graduated from what high school? You graduated from
Central
Good
High
Hope.
School.
Oh,
there was another high school at the time. Okay.
there was Good Hope. So you graduated from Central High School.
That's correct.
And you received the scholarship. What school did you go to?
I started off at Hampton University. I finished at Morgan State University.
You're a Morganite?
I'm a Morganite. I'm a bear.
Oh, interesting. And you have your background, your degrees in
civil engineering. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering.
And you came back and you worked. Where did you work specifically in the Water and Power Authority?
I worked in a power plant. I spent my first 5 years in the power plant. I did projects for the water department, but I was primarily stationed. The unit started off being called the Special Projects Unit, then it became the engineering department, and I was based in the power plant.
Okay. And I think that's important for people to know that you actually worked in the plant. We have somebody, a listener on the line that wants to ask a question. Listener, you can pose your question to Mr. Knight.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
This is Christy Payne. I'm calling with My Brother's Workshop. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. First of all, congratulations on the new position. And I'm just calling in because, if you're very well aware, MBW has been working on our campus project for a few years now. You were helpful in getting some ARPA funds for us to use for that project, as well as a bunch of local donations. And we've been working over 2.5 years to get connected to WAPA, both water and power. And we're just about ready, should be ready to open the facility, and are waiting on a WAPA connection. And we've been working with the engineer team, the line team, and we're kind of in this holding pattern and are just trying to do everything that we possibly can, everything done on our end by our team, our electrician, our project manager, and are hoping to have some movement on the WAPA side. So I wanted to kind of pose that or give that information to you and see if there's anything you would suggest, or if you'd be willing to come out and take a tour and see what we might be able to do moving forward so we can get connected to power and be able to open and provide our services to members in the community.
All right. Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention. If you're ready to be connected, let me reach out to the folks in systems planning and let me see what the issues might be, if there are any issues. So I'll certainly touch base with the team and I'll find out what we need to do to get you connected. That's not a problem.
Okay, great. I appreciate it. And you've got our contact information, so I will keep an eye out to hear back from you. And thank you so much. And again, congratulations.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. You guys have a great project out there. Let's get you powered up.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Interesting call. I thought they were gonna, but sometimes you have to grab them where you can get them, right? You just really have to grab them where you can get them. And you just answered that concern about, I'm so used to telling you a constituent called, right? So I have to change from constituent to say customer, right?
Yes, customers.
There was a report in the Daily News about a customer, a gentleman that relies on, an electric bed. His power was inadvertently disconnected, and he was stuck in the bed for several hours. This happened on your first day of the job. How are you going to address issues with individuals who rely on medical equipment for life, and your policy as it pertains to their disconnection or potential disconnection, and then the reliability of providing them electrical service? How have you given that any thoughts since this incident on Monday?
Yeah, so we did have a chance to discuss it briefly, and I was apprised of the fact that should not have happened. It was an error, and there actually is a process by which folks who are on medically sensitive equipment can actually reach out to the authority. I think there's also a conversation that you can have with Department of Human Services, and we actually kind of have a no disconnect list for folks that are medically dependent on electrical devices. That gentleman probably should have been on that list. So we looked at our policies internally. We reviewed those, and we are doubling down to make sure that those sort of errors don't occur. And I just want the public to know that, yes, there is a process through DHS. You can also reach out to our customer service office if you have a particular situation that you can validate that you are medically dependent on an electrical device. We do have exceptions to disconnections that we can do and work with you.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that program because my son I was on the do not disconnect list.
Yes.
I was not on the do not lose power list, but I was on the do not disconnect list when my son was living at home. Yeah. And, I got on that list. Somebody had said, you need to, I was like, well, I going to pay my WAPA bill. It was like, emergencies happen, something can happen, Jamila, get yourself on that list. And I did. And I'm very thankful that I did, because there was a time when I had a dispute with the Water and Power Authority, and that was very important to have. So those individuals, you go through the Department of Human Services, and then I actually did it reversed. I called WAPA, and WAPA told me you just need to verify if I wasn't receiving any support from DHS, but had I been receiving support from DHS, you would get a form from DHS. If you aren't, then you just have to bring in your medical certification to the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority, and the young ladies, they take very good care of you, and they put you on that list. And so I can vouch for that list. That list does truly actually exist. Yeah. You don't have a list about when power go, don't save, when you lose, do not turn off power. There's not that list, but there is that list. So I'm glad that you have taken a look at that policy. Let me ask you, you've only been on the job. This would be your third day.
This is day 3.
This is day 3. When you took this position, what were your short-term goals? I mean, going into a job, you go in and you're like, there are things that I want to do. What is it that when you took this position, you, Karl Knight, wanted to do?
There are things that I want to do, but there are things that I need to do.
Okay.
So what I need to do right now, WAPA's cash flow, there is a liquidity crisis at WAPA. What we generate in revenues does not cover the bills. And that gap is actually just getting wider and wider as each month progresses. We have a self-imposed rate cap. I think as policymakers throughout the territory, I think we have agreed that the current rates are about as high as we can take them without having adverse effects on the economy, without having adverse effects on households, without putting a hole in the government's budget. A rate increase at this point would sabotage the economy that has been striving since COVID, we would lose all the progress that we've made. So there is a self-imposed rate cap, but that means that we are not recovering through our rates what we're paying. Inflation has gone up, costs of goods and services have gone up. Everything is more expensive now, and that's also to WAPA. The folks that service WAPA, the goods and supplies and equipment that we purchase, all of those things have gone up. So what we need to do is we need to shrink our expenditures. We need to shrink our expenses. We need to become more efficient on our fuel purchases. We need to make sure that we're looking very closely at our personnel costs and other things, and we need to control spending. We need to reduce spending. We also need to increase our revenues, and that means we need to get our meters working. We need to make sure we're billing accurately. We need to make sure that we are adequately covering costs for things like street lighting. We need to make sure that we're not losing our commercial customers. We need to shore up our revenues and increase our revenues. And that balancing act between increasing revenues and dropping expenses, we need to get that to a point where our current revenues, our expenditures can fit within our current revenues without raising rates to the consumers.
Okay. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because we've worked, and when I say we, in my still current capacity and in your former capacity, we've worked together with our bosses on legislation, on measures to address some of the issues at WAPA. Prior to your engagement at WAPA, there should have been an agreement with WAPA to have this turnaround management company come in to assess and to give us a report that delineates, I think it's 6 items in the first 120 days, and then 7 items, or 7 and 6. However, I don't remember the exact how it goes. Have you had, I know this is day 3, but in this capacity, not in your previous capacity, but in your current capacity, have you had any discussions with the turnaround company? Do you know where they are in providing the Water and Power Authority and the government of the Virgin Islands with their findings, so that you can have a better bearing of what needs to be done and areas where you can potentially reduce your expenses?
No, I'm looking forward to working with the turnaround management company and getting that assessment. It's going to help me, of course, as you can imagine, coming into the position fairly new. It helps to have a additional set of eyes kind of look at the situation, and of course the information that they provide will be very instructive, and I look forward to those recommendations and reports. WAPA is fairly broke, so the PFA is who contracted with the turnaround management company. I did reach out to them on day 1, trying to figure out how close are we to starting that engagement. It has not begun as yet. I'm waiting to get a definitive response from the PFA as to when they're going to begin, and we can have our introductory meetings. And I do think that's going to be an asset over the next 6 months, which is a critical period for WAPA, to have an additional set of eyes sort of looking at the data that, so we have all the information that we have. The question is, okay, what can we do based on our current situation to keep our heads above water? There's great things that are right around the corner. We are making progress with getting 4 new Wattzilla generators on.
Okay, before we start talking about the generators, let's take this first break, and we'll be back, and we'll continue our discussion with the new Chief Executive Director of Water and Power Authority, Mr. Karl Knight. We'll be right back. are back. Good morning, good morning, good morning. If you're just tuning in, you're at 93.1 FM, WTJX, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. Before we continue our discussion, we have a listener on the line. Let's get... Oh, okay. We don't have a listener on the line, so that'll work. That worked out. And before we start talking about the Wärtsilä units that you need to bring on board, you mentioned revenue and making sure that your expenses align with your revenues. One of the issues with revenues is your billing process. So many of the bills are estimated. What are you going to do with the billing issues? Because people are being overcharged. Some people aren't being charged properly. One of the quickest way, low-hanging fruit, is making sure that the meters are read properly. How are you going to tackle making sure that the bills accurately reflect the customer's usage?
So, WAPA made a lot of progress several years back on advanced metering infrastructure that automated the whole process, allowed them to read all the meters remotely. The system would flag any readings that seemed out of whack with prior readings. So all of these, my bill was one thing, all this time, and then suddenly it surges to, 4 and 5 times what it usually is. The computer system would actually flag those sort of accounts, and you'd be able to dispatch a meter serviceman to find out what the issue is, if it's a malfunctioning of the meter or something else going on in the household. After the hurricane, a lot of that progress was apparently lost. So there are a lot of the system is not working at its full capacity. There are some meters that I think it's being read automatically, but there are others that require WAPA to go out and read them manually. WAPA had actually started reducing its meter reading workforce because it was building into this new automated system. They've had to reverse that. And yeah, it is a challenge getting out and reading all of the meters manually. Some of the meters are not functioning. There is a project that we are pursuing with FEMA to replace some of the damage that was done by the hurricanes and replace the meters. I think we're pretty close to getting a fixed cost offer. I imagine that within the next 30 days or so, we would have agreed on a fixed cost offer to fund WAPA to replace some of that advanced metering infrastructure. That will allow us to move back, make some of that progress back, regain some of that progress by installing that smart meters that can be automatically read. And that allows us to more quickly get a sense as to whether that meter is performing the way it should, or if we need to go out there and service the meter. So that's going to go a far way. And then, of course, you can do reconnects and disconnects. So if that customer calls in and says, hey, I shouldn't have been disconnected, you can automatically reconnect them right there at the office.
So let me ask you, and I think that for a long time, is it that the hurricane damaged the equipment, or was it that particular program, that advanced metering infrastructure technology that we were using just wasn't compatible? Because it seemed like they were at 90%. Every time they testified in front of the legislature, I could see the guy's face in front of me. He testified, we're at 90%, and you never move past that 90% mark. Are we sure? I mean, we may be way down the road on this, but sometimes you have to halt and say, hey, we may be running down the road with this piece of equipment, but this piece of equipment isn't ideal for what we need to do. Have we done an assessment as to whether or not this infrastructure, this technology, this system is viable and can work, or are we throwing good money after bad?
So that's a question I'm going to have to find the answers to. It is day 3.
Yeah, I understand.
And I haven't had a chance to drill down specifically on the advanced metering infrastructure system. Mm-hmm. I do believe, so my outside view of it, I actually believe, and what I've heard since I've come on board on Monday, mm-hmm. I do believe it may have been at 90% early on in its infancy. I think it seems to me what is happening is the meters are failing. They're perhaps not, maybe they're meeting their useful life, I don't know, or maybe they're prematurely malfunctioning. I need to get to the bottom of that. Okay. Somebody's going to give me some answers pretty soon, and then I'll be able to make some decisions as to whether we need to stick with the current system, or if we need to move on to something, start from scratch and build a brand new system. What I do know is that this isn't rocket science. We have utilities all across the country that have advanced metering infrastructure. I mean, everyone has moved in that direction. There are very few meter readers running around trying to read every single meter. That just doesn't happen much anymore. We are going to figure it out because others have figured it out too.
Yeah, and we just need to find a technology that works for us.
If it's not what we have, we'll find a technology that works.
Yeah, and we don't want to throw good money after bad. And I thought that was prudent because, that 90%, it's stuck in your head. And so if it couldn't pass 90%, maybe this wasn't the system for us, and maybe we need to look at another type of system that would work better for the territory. And I'm glad that you're open to having those discussions and getting the answers on that matter. Now, let's talk about all of this rotating power outages. What's happening? And I think our frustration in the territory is that we don't know what's going on. So can you tell us as succinctly as possible so we could get some questions in?
Sure.
What's happening with the power and the generation of power in our territory?
There are a couple of things that are happening. One, we have equipment that we're relying on that has they haven't been maintained. WAPA has been trying to cut pennies to fit within the current rate structure, and that means that they haven't been able to maintain all of their equipment in the manner that they should. Preventative maintenance is critical with a utility, and when you don't do your preventative maintenance, your equipment fails at inopportune times. We also have been having a challenge, quite frankly, with when we do need to fall back. The units that we have to run are running on diesel, and that we've had a difficult time recently of keeping up the inventory of diesel to a level that can adequately supply those units. So the last couple of weeks, for instance, in the St. Thomas St. John district, the diesel levels have been really low. And when you get to the bottom of the tank, there's rust and other sediment that collects over the years. And you start sucking some of that stuff, it starts to foul up your fuel pumps, it starts to foul up your filters, and your units start to trip. The only solution to that is you got to put fuel back into the tank. And WAPA was late in getting one of its fuel barges in because of some fiscal issues. And so they ended up really low in that tank, and they ended up sucking up those dregs and fouling up some of the equipment. So the challenges at the end of the day are financial in nature, the ability to adequately maintain units, and the ability to adequately maintain fuel inventory. We also have a challenge of being able to get some of the newer units online. If WAPA had gotten those online a little sooner, we probably would be able to avert a lot of the issues that we're having now. So, of course, there's a big push to get those Wartzellers online. They run on propane. It's a cheaper fuel. We can get more BTUs out of the plant for less costs, which is the bottom line. And so we're moving very quickly in that direction as well.
Okay, so let me ask you about the challenges with vendors. It's important when a new leader comes in that you develop relationships with your vendors and you have discussions with them. I know this is only day 3. However, have you reached out to those individuals that the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority have maybe long-term agreements with to purchase the propane and other essential supplies that you need, and to tell them so that you can build confidence in your leadership moving forward and what you plan to do with the Water and Power Authority that would make them comfortable in remaining in the relationship and extending maybe some courtesies to the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority?
So in my prior position, those conversations started maybe 2-3 months ago. So I've been able to sit with the leadership at Seven Seas, Agreco, Vital, Wartzilla. So I built those relationships prior to taking on the position. Okay. So we've had discussions on what they can do to help WAPA. Now that I'm switching the sides on the table, I can continue those conversations and actually follow through with some of the proposals that we've been discussing over the last few months.
Okay, so you have that sort of relationship.
Yes.
And I think relationships matter. And I think that in business, being of your word matters. And so, whatever agreement the government makes moving forward, we have to try to be of our word because it impacts every single person here in the territory. Now, your Wärtsilä units, how soon before those Wärtsilä units would be in place?
So we're pushing really hard. It's about a 5-month project that started a few weeks ago. Well, restarted. So they had gotten real close to commissioning the units, and then there was a stalemate because of lost time. There was a period of time when Wärtsilä couldn't work. They wanted to be compensated. There were some change orders that they wanted to be compensated for. All of that we've worked out. Wärtsilä's back on the job, feverishly working. We've actually given them an economic incentive. Part of the settlement of some of the financial disputes was to give them an incentive to bring the project in ahead of time. I have a conversation I'm setting up probably for the week is out with Wärtsilä to really find out if we can expedite the timeline even further. And I look forward, I believe those conversations will be fruitful because I do think they're in a position to do so. And we just need to cement that arrangement. So although they talked about a five-month project schedule, we think there's an opportunity to bring them in a little sooner. They're moving rather quickly, and we want to have that conversation with them.
Okay. You talked about maintenance. Does WAPA have a maintenance division? And when I talk about maintenance division, do you have personnel, in-house personnel, that's being trained alongside the members of Vital, Agreco, Wärtsilä? Do we have any local personnel that's being trained on the intricacies of these units? Are we, as part of our agreement, having these manufacturers teach our local personnel how to repair, maintain these units so that we're not held over the barrel in the event that for the unfortunate things that has happened before should happen again, where we can't make a payment, they withhold, and we don't have anybody on ground that knows how to fix it?
Right. So we, to my understanding, the answer to the question is yes. That's certainly been the case with our GE combustion turbines, where they've been the operators and the maintenance crews have been trained on how to maintain and service those for routine and preventative maintenance. Of course, major overhauls, you would probably bring in someone, but for routine and preventative maintenance, yes. We've done the same with the Wärtsiläs. We probably need to do some additional training on the Wärtsiläs. Agreco's are a little bit different because they are leased units. We don't own those, so we're not responsible for the maintenance and servicing of those units. That's the convenience of the Agrecos. But for everything else, I mean, I'm a strong believer that we need to be able to service and maintain anything that we own. So those units that we own and possess, I'm going to make sure we're investing in the training and have the capacity in-house to do the routine and preventative maintenance on those units.
And talking about routine and preventative maintenance, do you have within the Water and Power Authority structure, is there a repair and maintenance division? Is there and who monitors to make sure that the training is being conducted?
So we have a director of plant productions, very experienced, a lot of experience. And then, of course, we have our plant managers. And yes, within each plant, there is a maintenance superintendent, there's a maintenance division, and they oversee that training. We work with the manufacturers to provide training. In some cases, we send folks off. In some cases, the manufacturers come down. It's a combination of things. But yes, we do. WAPA, as far as I know, does have a good approach to making sure that the employees understand the equipment that they're working with, and that has been entrenched over many years.
Okay. And I think it's important because, power is out. People are saying, this morning I had a conversation with somebody in St. Thomas and power is out. For those who don't know and may not have been, been under a rock for a couple of days. What's happening currently in the St. Thomas district?
In the same
and why are they back on rotating power? I thought that was resolved.
There's an issue that we're having with the propane system.
Okay.
That's why that propane terminal is so critical, because now we have had to fall back on some of the legacy units that we've had in St. Thomas, Unit 23, Unit 27, Unit 15. Unit 15 has been giving us some problems. We were just converting Unit 15 to run on propane. I think we may have had to switch it back to diesel, but it's the most inefficient unit we have in the plant. 23 is a large unit. If we don't get to run it at full capacity, it's also fairly inefficient. They call it the gas guzzler. Mm-hmm. And 23 is so due for maintenance that we continue to have issues anytime we have to run it for a sustained period of time. Unit 27, same thing. It's due for major maintenance. So when we can't run on propane and we fall back on the older legacy units that WAPA had before the Wattsilla project, we end up in a situation where we have a lot of unreliability. Right now, one of those units is down. We're trying to carry St. Thomas and St. John with just 2 generators, and it's just not enough capacity to carry the island fully. So we do have to rotate power until we can get the propane system functioning.
So when you say the propane system, is that the 5-month window that you're talking about? Or, I mean, because people, is it that St. Thomas is going to be on rotating power for 5 months? Because you're saying the propane project, but you just said Wattsilla takes 5 months. So can we clear that up?
Yeah, no. It won't take 5 months.
Okay.
Hopefully it won't even take 5 days. Hopefully it won't take 5 hours, and they can figure it out. There is a acute issue happening right now with the propane terminal. I think they were trying to do the tie-ins with the new Watsillas. There's some things that they were doing over there, and I'll get a proper briefing. But essentially, there's an issue right now with the propane terminal and its ability to supply the Watsillas. They were doing a changeover and a tie-in, and I think there might have been some issues that they encountered. But that's not a prolonged problem. They're troubleshooting it, and they should have that resolved fairly quickly. It's been a couple of days, but they're troubleshooting and trying to resolve that situation.
Okay, and so if once they, we're going to take a break, and then we'll figure out what's happening in St. Thomas right when we come back. You're tuned in to 93.1 FM. We'll be back right after this short break. we are back. If you're just tuning in, you are at 93.1 FM WTJX, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands. I'm Jamila, filling in for Neville James, and I have the opportunity to interview, the first radio interview with Mr. Karl Knight, the new CEO, Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority. This is day 3 of his leadership over at the Water and Power Authority, and trial by fire, you sink or swim. Yeah. And so we're talking about the generation units in St. Thomas, the tie-in. I know this is day 3. You said that the reason for the outage is they ran into some difficulties in the conversion to the Watsillas.
So my wonderful team in St. Thomas updated me during the break.
Okay, thank you.
So it is growing pains. It is the tie-in with the new Watsillas. They're trying to commission the propane, and so they've had to shut down the system. It's going to be shut down until Friday.
Okay.
Unit 23 is giving problems. They have 2 units that are trying to carry the island on, Unit 15 and Unit 27. Those are not the most reliable units, but they're working on getting Unit 23 back on, and then they'll be able to get off of the rotating schedule. But we did have to take down the propane system, so all Watsillas, including the 2 that were running that are not part of the current project, everything is down on the propane side, and we're trying to carry the island with 2 units, and hopefully pretty soon with the 3 units. If we can get all 3 units running, we will be able to get off of rotating power. It is a little bit of a growing pain as we try to get the new units commissioned.
Okay, so and let me ask you about the new unit commission. When you say commission, I need to make it understand clearly, because you're having a discussion before the week ending with Watsilla about that 5-month time period.
Right.
Are we talking about you're going to be running St. Thomas on those 3 diesel units until this 5-month period ends? Or
No.
Are you going to be able to get back some of the propane so that there's reliability in the St. Thomas St. John district?
So St. Thomas currently has 3 Watsilla units that run on propane, and 2 are operational. Nothing's wrong with them. They can go today if the propane system was on. There's 1 that's down for maintenance that we'll be getting back, I think, on August 15th. So we'll have those 3 units operational. Unit 15 can swing over to operate on propane. So once the propane system is back this Friday, we'll swing 15 over to operate on propane. The commissioning is of the 4 newest units that we're installing. Okay. And so we have to run them through a series of tests to make sure that they can function as the manufacturer has represented.
Okay. So, in the St. Thomas and St. John district, we're looking at no sooner than sometime over the weekend where the rotating power will probably end.
No later. We expect it to end. It could end today if we get Unit 23 up today.
Okay.
But the
I like to manage expectations,
It should be no later than Friday.
No later than
right.
Friday.
On Friday, we should be turning back on the propane system. And even if we failed to get Unit 23 functioning by then, we should be able to carry the islands once again. We those guys are working right now as we speak, trying to get 23 back up.
Okay. I just want to, so St. Thomas, you're probably going to be in rotation until Friday. Have you issued a rotation schedule, and are you adhering to that rotation schedule?
Yeah, so I'm trying to tweak that process because we only rotate power when we absolutely have to. So sometimes when we jump out and we say this is the schedule, sometimes we're able to keep the power on a little bit longer. We are able to avert the rotation schedule a little bit longer, and so that throws off the schedule. We're trying to figure out a way to be a little bit more flexible in how we inform the customers. So, we're talking about having a conversation that says, we may have to rotate, and if we have to rotate, this is the period of time that you'll be out. When we start the rotation, this is the order in which we will be rotating, and kind of leave ourselves some wiggle room, because what's been happening is sometimes we are able to avert rotation for a period of time, and then when we start, the schedule that we put out is already outdated. So we're trying to be a little bit more nimble. This has been for the past month, this has been quite a challenge, and so we're trying to figure out a more effective way to allow the customers to plan around our rotation schedules and our operational challenges.
Yeah, and I mean, and I hear you on being able to avert, but sometimes, you know, trying to keep it on longer and then not having the schedule, and it creates additional anxiety for
Yes.
the public. And I think that if we relay the information to the public, again, word matters. Your word is your bond. If you're gonna come off, while you may like to keep it on, if this is the schedule, you try to adhere to the schedule, because people plan around what's published. And so, I'm just food for thought. We have a caller, a listener that
Sure.
wants to ask you a question. Go ahead.
People plan around what's published.
And caller, you can go ahead. You have to turn down your radio. Caller, you have to turn down your radio. Hello.
Yes,
Yes. Can you can ask your question?
yes. Also, I think the switching from propane, I think, if I'm correct, when they switch from propane to diesel, there's a lot of downtime for that also. We're losing a lot of businesses and losing a lot of money by having this occur. It's either we're going to use one system or we're going to use the other one. I don't understand why we switching between the both.
Yeah, there's not a lot of downtime. We can switch a unit. It's a matter of hours to switch a unit, like Unit 15 on St. Thomas or Unit 17 on St. Croix. It's not a lot of downtime at all. And it provides us the flexibility that allows us to do things like what we're doing right now, where one system isn't available, there's another source of fuel. Before, we were dependent on one source of fuel, and if anything happened to that source of fuel, a delayed shipment, a barge can't get in the harbor, you were just out of luck. We now have the flexibility of being dual fuel, and that's it's not instantaneous, but it's not a lot of downtime. We're able to do it without an outage at all.
Okay. Well, okay, the caller is gone. Okay. All right. So I think that's the frustration for a lot of people. Let's just face it. You have taken over the helm of an authority that people aren't warm and fuzzy about. The lack of information coming out of the authority, the quality of information, the validity of the verity of the Lord, I just stumbled all over my tongue of the information coming out of the authority has not been what people expect. We don't trust the Water and Power Authority. What are you going to do to regain the trust of the people who, when they open up when you see the little WAPA logo on your bill, you get anxiety in the post office. I just got my bill and I was scared to open it. And I know I'm not the only one. Yeah. What are you going to do to build back the trust? People are being wrongfully billed. And when you call customer service, sometimes you don't get somebody who's understanding on the other end. How are you going to communicate to a community that you feel their pain and that you want to fix the problems that exist? How are you going to do that?
So I starting with these sort of opportunities, I really, WAPA has a lot of really talented, capable individuals working throughout the company. I don't need to go and hold a wrench for them. I want to be in a position to have a constant and consistent dialogue with the public, to make the rounds, talk to the stakeholders wherever they may be, explain that we are going through a transformation process. I'm building a utility for the future, and that's going to take us a little bit of growing pains. It won't take us a lot of time. I feel we're going to start to make great strides very, very quickly. But there are growing pains, right? So there's a little bit of pain like what we're going through right now. In order for me to get new units online, I have to take down a system, and that creates some problems, right? Some operational challenges. But we've recently, prior to me coming on board, within the last 2 months, they started to beef up the communications team. So I'm inheriting a stronger communications team than existed, a few months ago. I look forward to sitting with them and talking about our outreach strategy and how we get the word out to the community. be a little bit more transparent, make sure that we're not, pridefully, we want to, perhaps save the public from understanding some of the challenges that we're having. But I think this is a community effort. I cannot turn around the Water and Power Authority by myself. It is our Water and Power Authority. It's owned by the people of the Virgin Islands. It's a community effort. Those of us that are on the authority's payroll have a particular obligation as to what we're supposed to do. But we need the support of the entire community. We need a little bit of patience and understanding, but we also need some of the technical acumen. It's a community effort. And in order to engage the community in that effort, I plan to have that frequent conversation. I plan to keep the public updated and make sure that you understand every step that we take. If we have a setback, I'll let you know we're having a setback. If we moving forward, I'll let you know we're moving forward. I hope to be able to tell you we're moving forward a lot more than we setting back.
Okay, fair enough. And I think that's important because people need to know. And I think if people know, okay, we're going to do rotating power for 5 days, and after the 5 days, you should be straight because we're on a new unit, tell them that. Right. But when the absence of information frustrates people, and while we're talking about the electrical side, I'm a West girl, true and true, born and bred. And I would not be able to go walk the streets of Frederickstead without asking about the water situation. Well, everybody is now focusing because power goes out. Where are we with the water lines? Where are we with making sure that our residents, especially on the western end of the island, aren't experiencing brown water? Where are you with that? Have you, I know it's day 3. However, I'm from Frederickstead. I have to ask about the water. Where are you with the water situation, and how are we going to address that?
So, the long-term situation, the long-term solution is to replace the pipes. The good news is that we have the fixed cost offer for the replacement of our aging and rusty pipes. Again, there's going to be some growing pains. I mean, a lot of digging up as we dig up the old pipes to put on the new pipes, right? But ultimately changing from the rusting iron pipes over to the new C900 PVC pipes is going to clean up that water situation. In the meantime, WAPA has adjusted the water chemistry to try to those liners and stuff that sort of got eroded when we changed over from desal to RO. We've adjusted the water chemistry to compensate for that. And so you should be seeing a better product coming out of the line. It continue to do the flushing and the things they've done before. But my mission is not to triage. My mission is to get those rusty pipes out of the ground and replace them with brand new pipes. And I think we have the funding coming online. And some of those projects are part of the ODR bundling. Some of those will be independent one-off projects that are not part of the big bundle. And little by little, we'll start to replace that aging infrastructure, and that will improve the quality of water going into the extremes of the system like Frederickstead.
Okay, and I know that on day 3, you've probably just been faced with the electrical issues, but I think it's important that we talk about the water issues as well. Schools are slated to open on Monday. Mm-hmm. Does the Water and Power Authority have a plan in place? Have you spoken to your team? I know you said we should be out of this rotation by Friday in St. Thomas, St. John District. Have you had communications with the Department of Education so that we can make sure that our students are able to enter classrooms that are, lit?
Yeah, we don't anticipate having that problem. We're going to be ready to go for schools. I mean, I can never predict the future. We are dealing with some fickle equipment that are desperately asking to be taken down and overhauled, right? So I can't guarantee that there won't be sporadic outages. What I can say is that the issues that are requiring us to have to rotate the power at this point should be resolved before the weekend starts. And so we should be ready to go come Monday morning.
All right. And let me ask you, because the time is about to end. But the next time you appear on NPR, or you visit me elsewhere to have a discussion with me, what would you have wanted to accomplish and checked off at the Water and Power Authority?
That's a wonderful question. So one of the things that we're working on feverishly along with the Wardzillas, we don't talk a lot about, is the battery energy system that goes along with the Wardzillas. I'm hoping that in very short order we'll have battery backup in the power plant in St. Thomas so that we won't have to rotate power when we have equipment failure, that we'll be able to buy ourselves a few hours to get that equipment back online, which I think is going to make a big difference in reducing the disruptions. We should be getting the Wardzillas on an expedited timeline. We should be the solar projects on the island of St. Croix. I'm hoping to be able to say that we have an interconnection agreement and we've pulled the switch and we're now getting juice from those solar farms onto the grid at a much lower cost than we currently produce it at Richmond. I am hoping to be able to say that we've negotiated now that we're out from under VTOL and we don't have an exclusivity on the purchase of propane from VTOL, that we've gone to the market and been able to negotiate better pricing. I want to be able to say that we've done the same for diesel. So those are my quick wins I'm trying to get in the next couple of months.
All right. I want to thank you for coming here and having this discussion. And thank you for allowing me, because, Neville wasn't here. You could have canceled. Thank you for allowing me to fill in and interview you. This has been Jamila Russell filling in for Neville James on Analyze This 93.1 FM. Until next time, bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.